Hello, fellow human consciousness. Let's spend a few minutes getting cosmic with the Caretakers of the Cosmos, Living Responsibly in an Unfinished World by Gary Lachman. This book was originally published in 2013, and I listened to a 2020 audio edition narrated by Russell Newton. So the Caretakers of the Cosmos is the third of the Gary Lachman books that I have read. I read The Lost Knowledge of the Imagination as well as The Secret Teachers of the Western World, and I chatted those here on my channel, so I will link to those chats down below if you are interested. But this book is basically a history of ideas, and I just love this. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to read it. I wanted to read another Lachman book this year, and I decided to choose this one because it really has this history of ideas, sort of like The Secret Teachers of the Western World, as well as The Lost Knowledge of the Imagination, structured in sort of a similar way, where we go through Western thought. You know, there's a sort of a parallel line of thought that runs throughout all of Western history that's not really religious. It's not really philosophical as far as necessarily as far as just like standard secular philosophy, but it's sort of trying to explain our place in the world, our place in the cosmos. And so it just sounded really interesting to me. So he kicks off the book early on and makes this point about the fallacy of human insignificance. And so he, at one point in the book, says that this is actually, if he were going to have a main point in the book, it would be this, to sort of address this current modern idea that we have sometimes. We hear often that humans are insignificant against the sort of the Darwinian evolutionary sort of view of the world, where it's just all happenstance that we're here and we're insignificant, and nothing really matters, and that we're kind of humanity is kind of a poison to the earth. And he argues it's actually quite the opposite because of our sort of unique consciousness that we have. So throughout time, there have been different claims about consciousness, like the divine consciousness and the consciousness of all things like animals as well as plants. And then some even argue that even matter, all matter, has some level of consciousness, which that is called panpsychism. But in this case, the human consciousness, he argues, goes on to argue in this book, that it actually is part of the cosmos. It is not part of the cosmos. It's connected constantly to the cosmos. We don't always know this, though, due to our material selves. But here's a good place to talk about the difference between the universe and the cosmos. And so the universe is the physical sort of environment, what we think of as the universe, with the galaxies, with the stars, with the black holes and the nebula, stuff like that, comprise the material universe. The cosmos, on the other hand, is a system. It's a cosmic system. It's a universal system. It's a universal sort of system that's moving together. And the consciousness of it is us, as well as potentially, I guess, other things, but us on the earth sort of have the highest level of consciousness that we know of so far, because humans have the ability to transcend ourselves. So he makes this point here about, often we'll say, I'm only human. This is an idea of thinking of us as insignificant. But he argues, the need is to actually be fully human, to self-actualize. And so humans have the ability in our consciousness, as far as we know, animals do not have the ability to transcend themselves, to transcend their consciousness. However, humans actually do this. So becoming fully human is self-actualizing. Self-actualizing is actually becoming more you. So if you do the work to become more you, you do something just because you find it meaningful to you. You find meaning in it. This could be almost anything that you would do, but that makes you more fully human. It might be doing some sort of, creative project of some kind, really relatively minor, just making something, but that's helping you to become more you, because this is expressing yourself. And so this sort of transcendence is something that we don't see so far, at least evidence of in animals. And then the only human is just sort of like selling ourselves short. So yes, you make mistakes. You say, oh, well, I'm only human. I make mistakes. The point is to not say, well, I can't help make mistakes. I'm human, so, whatever. The point is to try to not make the same mistake again. That's self-actualizing. So I hope that makes sense. So I kind of talked about the difference between the universe and the cosmos. So this actually leads us into then a discussion of duality, which is the material world that we exist in. So we have a material being. This is my material being is before you right now on this video, but my other side, my consciousness, is speaking to you. You can't see it, but it's speaking to you. So it's a duality of that's a sort of a constant interplay of us in matter, our consciousnesses in matter. A mystical experience is something he describes in this section, sort of like a mystical experience is when you have something that seems different. So you see something cosmically instead of something materially. So the different, you're seeing it then with your sort of your spiritual self or your consciousness self rather than your material self. So an example of this might be you might see a tree in a forest, and the tree somehow has some sort of, it connects you somehow to some sort of poetic feeling. You feel bigger somehow with just this tree. Even though it's a regular tree, you're seeing it differently somehow. Another example he uses in the book is when you say thank you. When you express gratitude to someone, often this is done just routinely, right? In a store, they give you your change and you say, oh, thank you, have a good day. You don't really feel that. You're not really engaged, your consciousness is not really engaged in that gratitude emotion. But when you actually feel gratitude, you know it, right? You feel it. It changes your emotional state. It changes your state of being when you actually feel that thank you. There's a difference there, and there's a different sort of energy being interchanged at that point between you and whoever or whatever you're thinking. Another example here is the rainbow. So the rainbow, we know a rainbow actually doesn't actually exist. It's, water particles, and light going through the water particles at a certain angle creates a rainbow, yet the rainbow's real to us. And this is actually the same sort of analogy can apply to almost anything like a table, like this table right here. It's actually molecules and atoms and energies, less than atoms even, at a quantum level, all being held together with something. It seems to us like a table, so we see it as a real table, but it's actually not there as a table. Just like a rainbow's actually not there as a rainbow, but of course, it is a real rainbow. And this rainbow that we see can create a change in us. This can create one of those cosmic experiences, right? When we see a rainbow, we somehow feel expanded, we feel connected to it, we feel some sense of beauty, and that is a connection then to our cosmic selves. Then life worlds. I wanted to talk about the life worlds that he talked about here. The life worlds are worlds that, so we don't inhabit the same world. I inhabit my world that I exist in because I'm in a sort of my own circle, right? My own circle of being within the greater cosmos. I am part of the cosmos, as are you, but you have your own circle of being, your own family, your own job, your own life circle, right? So this life world, that is your life world. So your life world might be different than, Prince Harry's. Or the Queen of England, or anybody else, all right, the president. Your life world is going to be different, so you're going to experience the world differently than other people. And so that's your own intimate sort of difference in life world. But then we have a communal life world. And this communal life world is often more superficial than our interior life world. So we have our own interior life world that is really attuned to our consciousness and our our connection to the cosmic. But our communal life world, which is the world we share with others, is often less so. It's more tied to the material. And this really reminded me of books versus movies. Books often, to me, are more life worldish. They're more interior because you're reading is a solitary thing, and the book is engaging you on a life world, sort of an interior level. But then when it gets adapted to movies, it's being adapted for the communal life world. And so therefore, a lot of sometimes details and what we found really meaningful in the book is sort of missing or portrayed in a different way in the communal version. And this really was illustrated to me recently over the filming, the soon to be released new version of Dune by Frank Herbert, which I've chatted that book, by the way, on my channel, so I'll link to that below. But that book is very, it's pretty in-depth philosophical science fiction. It addresses issues of religion and politics and power and even women, sort of like power, gender sort of roles and things like that. So it has a complexity to it that takes us into a certain world in a certain way. And then I've heard a lot of commentators like, can this book even be filmed, for a general audience and appeal to a general audience? And that is the friction there between the life world and the communal life world. So the communal life world is often more tied to the material world, a little more superficial. The life world itself, your interior world, is more complex and more tied to the cosmic usually. So hope that makes sense. Finally, before I run out of time, I just wanted to touch briefly on Petrarch climbing this mountain back on April 26, 1336. I've read this several times in several different books about how this really marks a shift in the perception of Western civilization, Western cultures, where the idea of perception had not existed in thought at that point. It was the first time Petrarch climbed a mountain purely for the purpose of looking at the view, the perspective. And perspective, suddenly, if you look at art prior to this period, it does not show perspective. If you look at art in the centuries really following this date, the Renaissance, we get the birth of perspective in Western art, and our whole consciousness shifts. It's hard for us to imagine a world where we don't understand perspective because we have this phrase, my own point of view. A person from before like 1336 or so wouldn't have that because they wouldn't have my point of view, because they wouldn't have a sense of perspective. And I just thought that was so cool. Finally, before I run out of time, I wanted to mention the human mind, the human consciousness as an anti-entropy machine. So, and entropy is the winding down, right? And then, so we hear all the time that the universe is slowly winding down. He argues maybe not, because the consciousness that exists is an anti-entropy, and sort of an anti-entropy machine, which actually creates complexity instead of entropy. So through our actions and our thoughts, he argues, we may be constantly repairing and expanding the universe. This reminded me, and I wanted to mention this because I just did a chat on the book Till by Daniel Kellman, and I chatted that, and I linked to the chat down below. But in the book Till, there is a section where there's a theological discussion going on, and someone says, "Can God make a stone that He can't pick up?" That sort of little thought exercise, and the theologian answers, "No, yes, He can." But then the humans in the case of Till, he talks about how our capacity to do destruction and sin expands the cosmos to then expand God himself, the divine itself, so that then he can pick up that stone, but then he can make another one that he can't pick up, and it expands again. So I thought that was sort of a cool illustration of that, although in the sense of the caretakers of the cosmos, we are not talking about destruction here. We are talking about self-actualizing to the benefit of the cosmos. So I enjoyed this a lot. I will be reading more Gary Lachman as time goes on, so stay tuned. My next chat is actually going to be some noir fiction, noir thriller, Laura by Vera Caspary, or maybe I should say noir-ish. I'll explain more on the chat, which should be coming up soon. Until next time, take care. Bye.